Firstly, that we've got quite a packed agenda, so if we can all try and keep it to kind of 2 or 3 questions on each item, that'd be great, and I'm going to be really strict on times. And then, is there any apologies for absence that haven't already been noted? Okay. Do you just want me to read them from here? So, Dan?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm subbing for Councillor Hellcroft-Scott this evening. Apologies for that.
George?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I'm substituting on behalf of Councillor Spring, who sends his apologies. Thank you.
Other George?
Thank you, Chair. Another George. Yeah, I'm subbing on behalf of Councillor Mrs. Elizabeth Turpin.
Eddie?
Thank you, Chair. I'm subbing on behalf of Councillor Hubbard.
Sat?
Subbing Councillor Nesrova.
Perfect. And then we've got other apologies from Lenny Williams, Medway Youth Council and Alice Pledger. And then is everyone happy if I sign the minutes of the last meeting? And then I've got that there's no urgent matters. And does anyone want to declare a DPI, whipping or any other significant interest? Adrian?
Thank you. Item 6C, the report of the annual report for the fostering panel. As a member of the fostering panel, I think I better make that known, but quite honestly, I can't see any reason to leave the room. Quite the reverse. I think being on the fostering panel has given one tremendous insight into what happens with our looked after children. Thank you.
Sharon?
As Adrian just said, I also sit on the fostering panel, so let that be known.
Dan?
I've just been put on the fostering panel, so I better do the same. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Then if we hand over to Kelly, if I missed somebody. Sorry, Eddie.
Sorry, Chair, to interrupt the agenda, but I can't hear diddly squat. I don't know what it is to pick up the microphone, so I'm just getting more Mutt and Jeff as I get older. I don't know what it is.
I think everybody will just have to put the microphones really close to them and speak loudly when they're speaking.
Can everybody else hear me clearly now? Now I can hear myself back lots, so that's great. Sorry, George.
I was going to make that point first off, but I may have an interest in item 7. My daughter-in-law and my 2 grandchildren attend a private school. I don't know whether that... I don't pay for it.
That's fine.
I wouldn't if I could. But I'm happy to sit out or whatever you want me to do.
No, you shouldn't. You won't need to.
No.
So, what was that?
Were you saying it's fine, Stephanie?
I'm okay, thank you.
Okay. Did somebody else down there have their hand up for another DPI, or are we? Yeah. Then now if I hand to Kelly and we start the presentation on the Youth Justice Plan.
Thank you, Chair. So welcome, members. Tonight's theme is around children's social care. So you've received 3 reports, Medway Youth Justice Plan, IRO Annual Report and the Annual Fostering Report. And we've also provided at the beginning of our 20-minute presentation an update on our focus visit from Ofsted. So I'll hand over to my team and Becky's going to start us off, our Head of Improvements, in respect of our focus visit update.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. I'm Becky Cooper. I'm Head of Improvement for Children's Services. If we could move through to the next, to the 3rd slide, please. Hopefully you will have all read our published letter from Ofsted that followed our most recent focus visit that took place in April. As you know, there isn't a judgment that's made on a focus visit, but good to note that there were no priority actions issued during the inspection, and whilst there are areas noted that we need to continue to strengthen, we very much knew ourselves well and Ofsted noted that we were already working and recognised those areas for continuous improvement. Next slide, please. And so just to reassure everybody that we have a relentless approach to our continuous improvement. We're focusing on several key areas. As noted here, the quality of assessments and planning. We have some targeted work taking place from now until the end of the year, and focus on our management oversight to ensure that that is effectively driving plans for children. Where there were areas noted in some delays in our intervention and decision making linked to pre-proceedings, there was already a plan in place, and we're working closely with legal services and the judiciary to address these. In fact, Ofsted noted that our tracking system was one of the best they'd seen in the country. So we know that we've got this in place, and it's now about driving that change with our partners. We know we can't do this alone. Next slide, please. We're also very aware that we need a workforce to carry out the work, and we have a relentless approach to our recruitment and, importantly, our retention of staff. We have recently introduced some further social media campaigns, and that is already making dividends in applications to children's services across many different areas of our work. We've had a number of staff recently return to Medway, and that's always a really good sign because people want to come and work with us. And whilst there are higher caseloads for some staff, we are beginning to see overall a reduction in caseloads. So we're still working closely with all our practitioners, and we have a new film that we'll be launching in the autumn that several of our staff are starring in, but we hope will also support further recruitment opportunities. Next slide, please. This is our most recently launched continuous improvement plan on one page, endorsed by the Continuous Improvement Board. And you can see here our targeted areas of work cover engagement and direct work. And it's great to have Lisa with us this evening, and Lisa's very much part of our participation work with all children across Medway. Also our workforce, and I've mentioned recruitment and retention. Our practice, so covering a whole range of areas there, but important to note, as I've already said, is our work with partners is key to driving continuous change and strengthening our practice in Medway. And finally, leadership. So that's our plan on a page that we're working to. And finally, just to give you a nod to what we're working to, we are anticipating our next ILACs that should be, well, we think will be any time from the summer of 2026. Prior to that, there is an opportunity, a chance that Medway will get a joint targeted area inspection that is likely to be focused on child sexual abuse within the family. That will be any time, or could be any time, from September 2025. But of course, Ofsted don't tell us when they're coming until the notification period. So we're working to these guidelines and actively preparing with our partners. And that concludes my presentation following our focus visit. Thank you. I'll hand over to Nicoletta and Mark for the Medway Youth Justice Plan.
Good evening, everyone. Mark and I will be presenting the highlights of the report for the Youth Justice Service. The Crime and Disorder Act 1998 requires for local authorities to provide a youth justice plan that needs to be updated on an annual basis, and that's what's been shared within the pack tonight. Obviously, the Youth Justice Service brings together the local authority staff, police, probation, health and education colleagues, and we are being governed by the Youth Justice Board, who meets on a regular basis. The Youth Justice Board, they've had sight of the report, they signed it off, and the report has been submitted to the Youth Justice board for England and Wales on the 30th of June of this year. So on the presentation, can I have the next slide, please? We are focusing on the strategic improvements that we've made that are incorporated in the report, and also the operational improvements. We have seen an increase in funding in order to ensure that the service is appropriately staffed to better assess, plan and deliver the intervention tailored to our children that we're working with. We've also improved our management oversight, given the increased capacity with a new practice manager and the team managers that joined the service. In terms of our way of working, we're ensuring that is trauma-informed, and that links in with the work that our colleagues in education have done and the training they've delivered across all schools in Medway. And also we're working very closely with our colleagues, and we've seen an increase in use of the Outcome 22 intervention. The booklets they are completing with our young people led to an increase, like 92% of those children did not reoffend, so that is a success story. The strategic improvements that we've made obviously have filtered into the operational improvements that we are seeing. So we have restructured and revamped risk panel, and that means that we know our children very well. We know the risks that they present, and we align the plans for intervention with that. The panel meets on a regular basis and is being chaired by a team manager. We've also reviewed the templates that we are using and the checklist, just to make sure that the assessments that we are completing are very comprehensive. They're looking at the young person and the system around them. And we've also improved our feedback loop with our magistrates and judiciary system, just to make sure that the reports that we are providing to the court are comprehensive and they understand the rationale behind the proposal that we're making. We've also improved the footprint of our victim involvement. We know that the recent HMIP inspections that have been carried out have put a significant focus on the support that the Youth Justice Service and the partnership provide to victims, and we're working towards that. And also, we are mindful that we need to have a very clear dashboard that tells us what the data looks like. We can look for themes and trends, so we can better analyze the need of the cohort of children that we're working with, and we are on stage 2 of developing the Power BI at the current time. So some performance highlights. Our first-time entrants number have reduced by 29%, which is still higher than our statistical neighbours, but I think we are making steady progress in that area. The reoffending has reduced in the number of reoffences per reoffender, and that is clearly detailed in the report. And I think it is positive to say that we are outperformed the Southeast average, so we are moving in the right direction. In terms of custody, we've seen an increase in custodial sentences for our young people from 1 the previous year to 5, as detailed in the report. And this increase has been mainly due to breaches, robbery and serious violence. And the other focus is definitely on disproportionality, because we still see in a high percentage of offending population from an ethnic minority background. That's at 40%, and that is from the 23% of the general population. Next slide, please. Obviously, we are not becoming complacent. While we're making some progress, we remain very ambitious for our children and for our workforce, because we are committed to deliver the best service possible for them. But we have to remain quite vigilant and curious about the areas that we need to further focus on and develop. We've identified that there are some key risks around workforce and capacity. So obviously, if we are not fully staffed, if we don't have the staff at the experience level required, then that might mean that we are seeing inconsistency in our practice, and that might impact not just on outcome for children, but equally on inspection outcomes. Education, training and employment, obviously, I think is another area of continuous focus. At the end of an order, in the report, we state that 35% of children were not in suitable education, training and employment, and 50% achieved one qualification through the AQA system that we're using. Obviously, there is information sharing because we work in a partnership way. We just need to make sure that we have service level agreements with all our partners. And if we don't have those in place, that means that we are risking to provide a fragmented service to children, and we might miss safeguarding opportunities. And for the victim support that I've already made reference to, there is limited coordination with external victim services, and this is a new area. I think that everyone is kind of working very closely with partners to further develop. And I just want to reassure everyone that obviously with this key risk and challenges, there are a number of mitigating factors that are included in the report. So we are addressing that and is also reflected in the plan for this year. Next slide, please. So the strategic priorities for 25-26 focuses on prevention of offending, on victim support, workforce development, addressing disproportionality, and ensuring that the children and young people's voices are being heard and shape our intervention and support that we're offering to them. Thank you. And I've also included some feedback that we've received from parents and children that we've supported, just for you to see the impact that our work is having. Thank you. I will pass on to Amanda.
Good evening, everybody. I'm here to present the IRO annual report, which stands for the Independent Reviewing Officers Service, which is an independent service cited in the local authority, which has a statutory obligation to report on how the local authority discharges its duties under legislation to children that we care for, children who are in care to us. And as I said, this is enshrined in legislation. There's a particular piece of legislation called the IRO Handbook, which tells us that we need to comment on individual work with those children, as well as themes and trends in terms of any gaps in services or provision that the local authority needs, we feed back to the local authority. So if we could have, yes, lovely, thank you very much. So I would say that the 24 to 25 report sees the continuation of a strong IRO service in Medway, with IROs continuing to review children's care plans and looking at how the local authority has discharged those duties. The service is made up of 10 people carrying out IRO responsibilities. It's 8.5, it's 8 full-time members of staff, 1 member of staff working 3 days a week, and we have a fostering IRO who holds a small handful of IRO children who are subject to our service, up to 12 children. And we've continued in the last year to offer high support and challenge to the services teams and social workers in all the different services in children's social care. And there was good evidence still of IROs improving outcomes for children. When we look at the data, we know it hasn't changed much from the last 2 years. Most of our children are older children now, which follows national trends. They're coming into care mainly, the largest cohort is children over the age of 10. And we know that the main reasons that children are leaving care is when they're turning 18 years of age, when they exit care, or when they return to live with their parents or family members for various different reasons. Medway has, like lots of local authorities, had to use unregulated care arrangements to look after some very small cohort of children. But over the last year, Medway's numbers of using those provisions have come down quite dramatically. I think it's been quite a success story in that there were 16 children in such arrangements, which decreased to 5 by the end of the year, and we're hoping for a further decrease, given some further news we're waiting for some providers to, we hope they've become children's homes, which will reduce it even further this year. The service is particularly mindful of the fact that one children's home was opened in 2024, and there's another planned opening of another children's home, which again is in line with what local councils are starting to do nationally, is reopen children's homes. We're particularly impressed this year with the implementation in the fostering service of the Mockingbird model, which is a great support to foster carers for our own in-house foster carers. And we've seen the impact of that in the service. It's been quite a success story in Medway. It's seen as very, very transformative for the foster carers, the support that they have to look after our children, and we've also seen the strengthening of the foundations of what we call permanence work for children, where we try to make the care arrangements for them as permanent as possible coming up to the age of 18, so they don't have to change and go to live in different care settings. And there's now a dedicated permanence lead worker in the Child in Care service, which was on the back of the being an interim service manager to embed some of that work. Main message, next slide please, thank you. So we know that in Medway there is still further work to do to increase placement stability, those stable care arrangements for children, including how we match children to long-term carers, how we work out how long-term carers are going to meet their needs in the medium and the long term, rather than just arriving in their care. We have to think about, are they the right fit? And if not, we have to swiftly identify carers that would be the right fit for them, so they're as stable as possible and don't have any further changes. We know that the recording and sharing of children's care plans is an area that we want to strengthen, and there's further work planned this year to develop that work. We know that life story work, which is often very similar to other local authorities that are good, we often hear that life story work needs strengthening in good authorities, along with care plans. It's very important for children who are in care to have explanations about why they came into care, and like you would with all of your children living in your own family, you refine and you add to their understanding of those explanations. And importantly for our children, they're often left not always understanding why they had to move from one foster home to another, and they look back sometimes and think it might be their fault. So we're very keen to make sure that moves in care are also well explained to children in a non-blaming way that they can take forward and not feel bad about themselves. We think that potentially in Medway that there could be further work developed to think about whether or not all the children that have come into care over the year have needed to come into care, and whether or not some increased front-loading of assessments using the public law outline, or perhaps earlier interventions into families whilst they're in the community might have helped families and strengthened families to maintain children at home and kept children out of being on the edge of care or even having to come into care. So we're sort of recommending that Medway look at that further. Going forward, next slide please. Going forward for 25 to 26, we want to collaborate more with teams and services to develop and improve the life story work, as I've just mentioned. We want to review children who are subject to deprivation of liberty orders, where they're not in secure settings, but they've had a lot of sanctions put on them. They can't have things like phones to use or access, and they might be having to be held and stopped from running off and going missing in various care settings. So we're going to visit those children and hold statutory reviews every 3 months, and that's very much in line with what's going on in the South East region as well. We want to implement some quality assurance activities to help service improvement around care plans becoming better for children, better recording of them, making them more child-friendly, and representing other plans in those plans, such as educational plans, and if children are in remand, for instance, they have remand plans. We want to have one main care plan that's a document that people can look at and is as child-friendly and family-friendly as possible to share with families and with children. And we want to support work to develop those care plans for children, particularly children under the age of 16. We think for the 16-year-olds and above who have pathway plans that they're quite well represented and they're quite good documents, but we'd like to strengthen the ones at the moment into those individual care plans. We very much want to consider with senior managers in Medway how we can scope and consider an 18-plus offer to children who are exiting care. So what we hear back from 18-year-olds is that everything drops off a cliff for them, including their IRO, who's often known them longer than some of their social workers. And I can give you anecdotal evidence of when my IROs have stayed in touch sometimes informally with those children because they feel themselves it's too soon to say goodbye. And in line with the South East region, that could be for up to 6 months that we would stay involved. We're going to try to publish a child-friendly version of this plan, co-produced with children, starting to do that work and have something in place by September of this year. And I've started to meet with a small group of children to look at how we might be able to do that. We're going to continue to scrutinise adoption support plans because there is quite a lot of change in adoption across England. supporting greater open adoption arrangements whereby children will maintain some links to their birth families. And that's a well-researched area that means that outcomes are better for children if that happens. Most people being assessed now for adoptions to become adoptive parents understand the need for open adoption. That's part of the assessment process. We're going to continue to refresh and help our young people chair and steer their own review meetings so that it's not a tick box exercise for what we want to cover off, but they're having conversations with us about what they want to talk to us about. And we're going to further develop our IRO profiles so that these are more accessible to children and young people. And what I mean by that is cards to give children with information about ourselves, electronic versions of that. And we've started to do some work with a group of children last week, in actual fact, to develop those forms of communication with them. Thank you. I'm going to pass on to Andrada now, please, for the fostering report.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Andrea Pepenel, Head of Provider Services. I hope everyone had the opportunity to read the annual fostering report. I will be presenting a few key highlights from the report. If I could have that slide, thank you very much. I have included on the slide a few pictures from various events that took place over the year, so you can see as well. Thank you. During last year, we have focused on increasing the number of our in-house foster carers, as well as making sure we have recruited foster carers from diverse backgrounds. We have strengthened the support offer for our foster carers, and we have expanded on specialist fostering provisions, including siblings group and parent and child arrangements. We have joined the local authority Fostering Southeast, and we have launched our Medway's first Mockingbird constellation. We have also submitted to Ofsted to register our supported homes host in October. And we had a diagnostic review in March 2025, which focused on looking at our fostering service and giving us feedback. Next slide, please. I have included here some numbers for you to be able to see. Last year, we have approved 8 new foster carers and 19 kinship carers. On a positive note, you will see that we have lost less foster carers that transferred to IFAs, and we have had a high number of foster carers that ceased to be our own registered foster carers because they wanted to take a special guardianship and care for the children. Next slide, please. Our key objectives for next year, meaning this year, as you will see, we want to continue to increase the number of in-house foster carers. And I am pleased to say that from April to date, we have already approved 6 foster carers and 3 supported homes hosts. We want to continue to enhance our recruitment from diverse backgrounds, strengthen the support offered to our foster carers. As of April this year, we have launched our updated finance policy, which supports our foster carers. We have also launched our new training package for our foster carers, and we have welcomed 3 new parent and child foster carers. We have also implemented the new restructuring fostering service as of 1st of April, which brought us additional management capacity and extra resources. Next slide, please. We want to continue to collaborate with local authority Fostering Southeast and learn from our colleagues. We also want to launch 2 additional Mockingbirds, and I'm pleased to say that we have already launched our second one with the theme being adolescence, and we have a plan to launch our 3rd Mockingbird constellation for October. We are still waiting for our Ofsted registration with our supported homes, but we are confident that this will most likely happen this year. We have also applied in July for the kinship allowance pilot, and we are waiting for the outcome of that. And we want to continue to develop our kinship offer. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrada and team, and we're open to questions. Next slide. Thank you.
So obviously we've taken all the presentations at once. If we can do the questions though in the order they are in the agenda. So we'll take questions on the Youth Justice Plan first, then the IRO FSR, and then the fostering report. So if anyone has questions on the Justice Plan. So Adrian first.
Thank you, Chair. And also like to make a comment on the social care update, because I think that's quite important, because that was a very positive report, and it's very encouraging to see that our journey towards excellent and outstanding is continuing. However, I strongly feel that as a committee, we're a scrutiny committee, and we should be tracking that progress. So on the areas for improvement, could we perhaps have a report back to this committee? It's just a short one later on in the year, so the members of the committee can keep an eye on how things are improving, because my great fear is, whilst we've done very well, I think, on our journey over the last 3 or 4 years, there's always a terrible danger we might slip back. And I think one of the things that went wrong 3 or 4 years ago was that this scrutiny committee probably was in the dark a bit compared with what we are now. And I think we're in a good place now, but we want to make sure we stay in that good place. So that's my bit about that. As far as the Medway Youth Justice Plan, it really is good to see the reduction in reoffending. That is a really, really good milestone. And the other key KPIs seem to be going in the right direction as well. Also, I think we've also got to realise we're dealing with a very small cohort. It's like with the one in custody. Statistically, it's a huge increase, but we're only talking about a very small number of people involved. So I think we've got to always bear that in mind. What is euphemistically called disproportionality, which I think we've got to be very careful what we say and do on this, because it is really such a sensitive area. But what we've got to make sure is that, as a Lord Chief Justice said many years ago, we are all equal under the law. And where, for reasons of political correctness or nervousness, this policy has not been taken forward, particularly by the police, that has led to terrible problems. So whilst I fully accept it's a sensitive issue, but we've got to deal with it robustly. And I'm sure we'll also, we've got to make sure that we don't have a blanket approach, and people get the impression it's every ethnic minority in Medway is causing problems, because it's not. We have the vast majority of our ethnic minorities here in Medway are really good, decent, hard-working people, and I admire them, for what they've contributed to the community. But where we have got people stepping out of line, I believe that's got to be dealt with firmly, and we shouldn't be nervous about that. One thing that did catch my eye on the Youth Justice Plan was the police's early intervention workbooks. That sounds very interesting. Would it be possible perhaps for electronically a copy of this to be sent to the members of the committee? I'm sure we'd all find that very interesting, and it was good to see that that's producing very positive results. There was a long list of risks and issues also in the report, from on the main report from pages 38 through to 41. Again, could we perhaps later in the year have a brief report back on how those are progressing, so that we can keep our eye on what's happening there? The IRO report was absolutely fantastic as ever. I've come to really admire the work done in that area. There's just 2 questions I'd like to ask on that is, how was the extra IRO post added, that's been added to deal with the needs of unaccompanied...
Adrian, I think we're going to take the questions on the IRO report afterwards, so this is
okay,
Justice,
right,
we'll come back.
I'll stop now then, yes, and come back then. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Galvin. In respect of an update children's services improvement and how we're taking forward our plan. I'm happy to bring back a quarterly report in line with the Chair's agreement, and then we can do a briefing note to members of this committee.
That'd be good.
In respect of any comments in respect of disproportionality or early intervention, Mark or Nicoletta?
I think in relation to the workbooks, we can liaise with our colleagues from the police, seek their agreement for that to be shared, and that would be, we can take that forward. And also we can bring a report back with the agreement of the Chair in terms of the progress we're making. Obviously, we have our Youth Justice Board that happens on a 8 weekly basis. Obviously, that's we are reporting there on the progress. And what I haven't added in my presentation is that each area that we're going to focus this year, we have nominated a lead from the police, like Celia's lead on 2 of our main priorities. So we are working collaboratively, all of us, to make sure that we are making that progress. And the Youth Justice Board is overseeing all that work and is holding us to account. And in terms of disproportionality, I think that's something that obviously we are very mindful of it in terms of the assessments that we are completing. We're making sure that that is taken into account and the children are being seen as children first, and we are treating them as children, and we're looking at the systems around them to make sure they're receiving the support they need, irrespective of the ethnic background they're coming from.
So if we come to Douglas next, and then if everyone that has already indicated can just pop your hands up again, because I think I've missed some people, so.
Wow, that's very loud, isn't it? Oh, 1 second, let me just adjust the... I seem to have a floppy mic. No, thank you very much for the report. It is disheartening to see some of the figures there, but we have to be uplifted by the positives. I'm here to just challenge some of the comments around the disproportionality rates that we have. There's one thing to be said to publish such data, and it's important that there's transparency, and I'm all open for that robustness about it. I don't think we should be skirting around these challenges. We're in this situation because we skirt around these issues. I'm all about being proactive. I've worked with several groups, ranging from Elevated Minds that do a lot of preventative work. And what they tell me is funding for those preventative measures have been cut or reduced. So when I see statistics like that shown, equally I expect to have evidence of what have you tried as an intervention, how much money you've put in place, what are the outcome measures, how you've incentivized those groups to continue working instead of going from organization to organizations. We know there's no youth centers out there. We know the provisions across health, education are lacking for a lot of groups, but still we need to make sure that community groups that are affected by this are also held accountable. And that is something these lived experience groups offer, enabling groups, families, communities take responsibilities for taking ownership and re-educating some of their minors who are involved in such a situation as well. So I expect outcome measures that show a preventative strategy across education, across health, and who are these organizations. I expect them here to come back and report their findings instead of just having these highlight figures with no way of measuring what's working and what's not working. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm happy just to answer that. I actually think that Medway is in a good position. I joined Medway Council in March this year, and one of the reasons was actually because I think it has an outstanding youth service, and we work very closely with them within youth justice. So where we're focusing more this year on prevention, we currently have a grant from the Ministry of Justice for around about £60,000, which is focused on identifying children we are worried about before they've come into the criminal justice system. And we deliver that in collaboration with the youth service. And my service are primarily based at a youth centre in Strood, so we work collaboratively closely with the youth service to try and do some of that identification, prevention, and to be in places where we need to be before children are actually committing crimes, before they're getting arrested. You reference sort of various groups, and I would welcome an opportunity to come and meet with those groups. Like I say, I'm quite new to Medway, so I'm still finding my feet in terms of some of those communities and community leaders. And if there's an opportunity to have more of these conversations, and to shape some of that preventative diversionary work, then I'd be very interested in being able to do that.
Come back to that. Did you say £60,000? Just for me to be correct.
That's the amount of. That's the amount of. Sorry, I've just got. Yeah, that's the amount of money that we have been awarded by the Ministry of Justice. So that's an external grant that we get. We also, that work is aligned with Kent Police, who have they have their child centre policing officers. There's around 10 of those in Medway. So we collaborate with them, who are also doing some of that work. And obviously some of my team are focused far more on that kind of sort of diversionary work. So there's that external grant, which allows us to do more, but then there's also those resources we have kind of within our own services and that collaboration with the police and others.
Sure, thank you for that. And just for clarity, £60,000 for a problem of this scale, I think all of us can broadly agree that's not enough. That's not going to scratch the surface at all for the numbers that we're looking to change, to go in the right direction. So I'm talking about sustainability. Grants where organizations have to continually have to come back and beg for money, beg for money, beg for money. A lot of them just give up the ghost. You need to have a long-term plan, so you have some stakeholders involved that will work for a long period of time with these young individuals that have brothers, they have sisters. There's no point of them existing for 1 year, then disappearing. We're going to be at the same point all the time, but ultimately, I just want to close, because I've talked too much about this. It's about that collaborative piece and ensuring communities ultimately are responsible for remedying this, but they need support in that process.
Can I also, on just the disproportionality thing, is there any chance we could ask, I can check with you guys, but a briefing note on that around the stats within that? So kind of, we've got the base stat of offending, but then what is the justice that's then meted? Is that proportional? If we can look at that throughout the youth justice process and get something on that, is that okay? Yeah, let's show it. Then next one here is George.
Thank you, Leah, and thank you for the reports and the presentation, which is really positive, and really pleased to hear you join Medway Council. Great to have you on board. In terms of, for me, just looking at the page specifically, software is not the best at giving page number 13, which is just on the key risks and challenges. I'm just interested in terms of the workforce and capacity, and we're talking specifically about the turnover, but also the inconsistent practice. I'm just interested in sort of your views in terms of that, in terms of obviously noting the national challenges that there are in this area, but just in terms of what you think from a Medway specific perspective we can do to perhaps further mitigate some of those challenges. And then on the inconsistent practice, just about what we're doing sort of in terms of sort of trying to drive a system, whole system approach within the staff teams around that. And then just finally for me, just around the victim support, we're talking limited coordination with the external victim services. I'm just interested in terms of how we might be addressing that with police service, Kent Police, but also with obviously victim support services, some of which are overseen obviously by the Police and Crime Commissioner, etc. So I'm just interested in terms of what conversations have been had with regional police leaders on that as well. Thank you.
So in relation to our workforce development, I think we have seen an increase in terms of the staff members that we now have. As I've already alluded to, we already have team managers that they're part of the current structure. Prior, we only have one team manager. Now we're going to go out for recruit for the second permanent team manager. We already have a locum team manager in post, and I think her presence in the service has made significant progress in terms of the quality of practice that we are seeing through our quality assurance systems. And we also have an additional team manager that focuses on the quality assurance to make sure that it's not just about the numbers, it's about the children experiences behind the numbers. We also added another practice manager role, so they will be focusing on strands of the work, making sure that everyone is responsible and accountable for the progress that is being made. And equally, it is about the retention element, because you can bring people in, but if you're not supporting them and you can't retain them, then obviously we will see that churn. But we are focusing very much on ensuring that we upskilling our workforce. Because if you have a confident workforce that they know what they're doing, they're confident when they're going out, seeing children and parents and working with partners, then they will, I think they will stay with us longer. And we are seeing, I think the workforce in the service has remained stable for quite a while now. And I think we are working very closely with our probation colleagues, with CAMS, so it's not just about local authority staff, it is about our partners, and we are making every effort to make sure that they feel that they're part of the service, they spend time in the office with their colleagues, they have those casual conversations about what would you do here, how would you support this young person. So it is that family feeling that we are here to support children and to get the best outcomes for them. In terms of the victim support, obviously that's one of our areas that we're going to be focusing on within this plan that we've put forward. And it is about the work that we're doing with police. We know that there is a victim support police officer that we are making contact with. We will be providing, I think the next board will be focusing on victims, because that's an area that's kind of new to other youth justice services. Because I think the remit is now expanded. The expectation is for us to support all victims out there, but do we have the capacity to do it? And we can't do it ourselves. That's why we just need the buy-in from our partners, and I'm sure Mark can add a bit more on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I come in on this? Sorry. So I chair the Youth Justice Partnership Board. It is a multi-agency board, lots of representation from all of the extra services. We have reviewed the board following the review of the service. We have updated the membership to make sure that everybody who's attending the board is actively involved. The board's terms of reference have changed. They are themed, and as Nicoletta said, victim support is very much high on that agenda at the moment, because it's an area that we don't know as well as we know other areas. I would also say that diversity, disproportionality is a standing item on every board. The board members have had a full day of training so that they understand their roles in terms of how they are providing the governance and ensuring that services are connected around the service and the provision for our young people. So just to give you that assurance, you know, there's a lot of work being done at pace, and that information will be coming to you in a much more full manner as we move forward.
I was just going to say thank you, Celia, for that response. Thank you as well for the response. I think you know, if there's anything we can do to support on that, I'm always happy to. I know as leader of the opposition, I meet regularly with the Chief Superintendent, Chief Inspector and others, always happy to support anything in this regard, because I think it's really important that we always keep victims at the heart of what we're doing, but note the comments in terms of the transformation that you're driving in terms of the Youth Justice Board, which I think is just brilliant, so thank you.
So then the rest of this list that I've got is Eddie, Damola, Sharon and Satinder. If there's anybody else, if you indicate now, but if we can all try and keep our contributions quite short because we are running over already. So.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'm struggling to hear, and I'm not quite sure whether I'm coming at the right place. The two subject matters I want to ask about is SEND and also foster carers.
Are they both in that one? Yeah, I don't think send is on this agenda, but fostering is later. What? Ask them now and we'll put them.
Councillor Peake, your mic's gone off.
Oh, sorry, I thought I put it off and then twitchy finger. Trying to get my head round. I mean, it's to be commended that you've recognised there is an issue about foster carers who need to give them support and training. Can you expand on how big the problem is, the ratio between the need, the demand, and then the amount of foster carers you've got that are, for want of a better term, fit and able to become a carer? And then how does that compare to those that you have as applicants that have the desire, but they're not qualified and they need training to bring them up to speed, as it were?
Yeah.
That's the first subject. I thought I did hear or see a reference about SEND. I'm sure I did, because that is something of interest to me. And I was wondering if there's an increase in identification of children with SEND, which is something very important to me because of my own personal experiences. I got interested in mental health when I started teaching children with SEND, saw myself in their behaviour, and I'm fully on board now with the idea that you do need to identify to be able to support and help. Whereas when I was younger, including me, I would have just scoffed at that idea. So I'm just wondering.
I think the reference to SEND was just for children in fostering. But I think so both the questions we can put in the fostering, and if you answer them, Andrada, when we come to the fostering report, but you've got them noted, and that's fine. In that case, then, Damola.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you all for the reports that you provided. I had two questions, and the first one was going back to that disproportionality conversation. So just in terms of that, have we looked into any issues that could be happening at the homes or the schools of these children from ethnic minorities? Are we doing anything to educate the parents to avoid their children turning to crime? The second one was, what actions are we putting in place to ensure children are in suitable ETEs to help reduce chances of reoffending?
In response to your first question, we have a very comprehensive assessment tool that we are using. So that includes us understanding the family background, the relationship between children and parents, and the impact that maybe early traumatic experienced events might have on their behavior at the current time. And part of our intervention is not just to work with a child, to work with the family, with the parents. We are now focusing on, because I think we sometimes see that we're talking to parents with mums, not necessarily with dads. We're making a concerted effort to make sure that fathers are involved in our assessment process to understand what the role model was for the young person, and how we can support them to repair that relationship. So there is work. We're not, as I said, we're not seeing the child in isolation. We're seeing the child within the system around them, because otherwise I don't think we would be able to understand the problem and offer the support that they need. And in terms of working with parents, we are putting support plans in place for children. So obviously parents are part of that. And it is important for the parents to be behind the plan and support us in what we want to achieve, and be there for their children. Mark, do you want to add anything else on this one?
Yes, I mean, I absolutely agree with what Nicoletta has said. We are looking to improve. We set a plan with every child that we're working with at the start, and we will always look to include parents and carers, in that meeting. And what I've asked my service to do is to always be thinking about that plan actually should set goals, ambitions, targets for what we're doing with parents. So it's not just all focused on the child, because parents can be a risk factor. If they're not parenting sufficiently well, they can also be a huge protective factor if we can support them. Other things that we're looking to develop, which we need to strengthen is around there's an adolescent parenting program, so a program for parents of adolescents. And we need to do more of that with our parents so they understand, you know, what their teenage child is going through, because it is a time of huge change, but also how they can be better parents, how they can support their child more.
So, Lisa?
Thank you, Leah. Yeah, so my question is also around disproportionality. Obviously, we've reported the ethnic minorities. It'd be really lovely to find out about the percentage of children with SEND as well. I know that the youth justice system reported back in 2022 now that there was over 80% of children in the system with SEND. So it'd be really nice to have that. I don't know if that could be added to your bit that you were asking for earlier on, Leah.
Sorry, I think, Damola, did you say you had a second?
Yeah, it was just my question in regards to the education, training and employment. So obviously there's a figure here that says 35% of children are not in suitable ETs at the end of order. So I just wanted to know what's being done in order to make sure they are, because that's quite a high percentage.
It is a challenge. It's not just a challenge for Medway. It's known to be a national challenge for every youth justice service across England and Wales. So we're not working in isolation, and in that respect, we're not particularly different, you know, to elsewhere. One of the things that we are looking to do at the moment, we are hopefully securing some additional money through the sort of the Kent and Medway Violence Reduction Unit, where we can start to work with a number of schools around how we can prevent children being suspended repeatedly. And some of that will be about what extra support we can deliver. So if children can be engaged in things that are positive, that they're interested in, then our hypothesis is that by doing that, they will, you know, their engagement in school will improve. So we have that. We have sort of touched on, we offer a number of different qualifications within youth justice, so children, even though they may have fallen out of school temporarily, can still be studying, can still be doing some of that work. And we continue to work very closely with our education colleagues, like the virtual school, in terms of then being able to try and, if we can help children stabilise, if we can help them understand kind of what's going on, then part of that is how we can help re-engage them, you know, in school, in college, you know, so that, because again, that's a huge protective factor. And they may be safe and stable while they're with us because of the amount of support we can offer them, but that's time limited. We have to be able to re-engage them back in school. It's not easy, and and there will always be these challenges, but that remains a key focus for us.
Sharon?
Thank you, Chair. Lisa actually asked the question that was at the top of my list, surprise, surprise. But I know we're here to scrutinise, but I just want to give praise also where it's due, because to look at the reoffending rates, there's something you're doing right. It's really, really good, and it's really good to see. And I know this was a bit on the fostering as well, but I actually was in High Down Prison on Wednesday and listening to care leavers' lived experience. And I think this post-18 pathway we're putting in will actually really help this as well. Because a lot of what they were saying was when we reached 15 and we got in trouble with the police, we thought we were on our own. So I think I really will be eager to see if this post-18 pathway helps them numbers actually decrease in reoffending and everything. So thank you. You're doing a good job.
Sat.
So I think most of what I was going to say has been covered, and we've been dwelling on disproportionality quite a bit, so I'll keep it short. We're going to get a briefing paper, is that right, on this topic? it's always quite interesting to hear a right-wing perspective as well, you know, from your previous kind of contributions. I felt were quite delusional. I'm not quite unpicked this one yet. I'll have to go back over the video, but I'm not quite sure who you meant who was being nervous in this perspective. But I can go back over this recording later to see what you're saying. But based on previous ones, like I said, pretty delusional right-wing. My question was basically around what your perspectives were in terms of what is contributing to this disproportionality locally, localised contributions. We know obviously what the factors are nationally, which would be interesting to see your perspective and what you felt those factors were as well. Oh, really? Yeah, okay. And is there anything we can do as councillors in our positions to help support this and reduce the numbers? Yeah.
I think that's a very difficult question to answer, because if we had the answer to that, we would have addressed the issue and we wouldn't be having this conversation. I think that disproportionality, that's something that we are focusing on, and I think is in collaboration with our colleagues in the police. We will look into that, and I know there are lots of numbers, we're looking at areas. It is about, I think, the ethnic kind of percentage that is different from Medway. I think it's like 23% of ethnic minorities in Medway and 40% they kind of, some of them are children known to us. So I think it is about us doing some deep diving and understanding what the issue are, but I don't have an answer for you tonight. I think it's quite complex. I think we just need to determine the key areas of the briefing and what we need to focus on, because some of the questions we might not be able to answer now. We might need longer to look into it and understand, and then obviously come back here and ask for support if that is still on offer.
Can I ask Nicoletta and Mark just to share about the open day, which I think we should open up to members of Scrutiny to attend to Youth Justice?
Yes, I think we obviously we want to raise Youth Justice Service profile out there. We want to become known to members. We've provisionally booked a date for September, which we've had to move because there is a significant event going on. Is our MADS a word, but we will look in at potentially September, beginning of October. So that will be an open invitation to members to come and meet the team. There will be some presentation about the work that we're doing. So I think it's just for you to understand a bit more about what we're doing and probably some of the questions that you might have or support that you think that you can put forward to the service to look into and take forward.
Once you have a date, Nicoletta, if you can forward me the flyer, then I can circulate it.
So, Eddie, to check your contribution, your questions were on fostering, weren't they? Yeah, so they are coming there in a later section, but we'll, Andrada will answer them in that. You can hear better now, yeah? Okay, that's fine. Mark?
Thank you, Chair. I'm probably going to stay out on this one. The accusations are being chucked over across this room about right wing, obviously some people being left wing. On this committee, every one of us are committed for the best outcomes for children. One of the things that it said is that when we're looking at disproportionality, with regards to all children, it doesn't really mention about the disproportionality of children from disadvantaged backgrounds, so on the low incomes. Would it be possible to maybe have a look at that number and seeing how much they are affected in that across all backgrounds? So, because I think that is a common denominator with disadvantaged and low income backgrounds. Seems to be a high proportion of prison people going to prison, and that would be even better to know that sort of number, and then we're treating all children the same. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Joy. I'll work with the team and we'll do a detailed briefing paper that we'll ask the Chair to send and Steph for her support to do that.
Perfect. So if we then move on to any questions on the... Oh my God. So, over to Sharon. Sorry, Sharon. Skip all of that bit.
That's all right. I've just realised I've got my husband's glasses on, so this should be really fun. I move that. This committee notes that Medway Youth Justice Plan 2025 to 2026 is set out in an Appendix 1 to the Cabinet, and also recommends full council to approve the Medway Youth Justice Plan 2025 to 2026. Kelly to give the committee a small quarterly report to keep this committee updated, a briefing note on proportionality, but the details will be further, and also Stephanie will circulate the open day date when it's confirmed.
Is that seconded? And agreed? Then now we'll move on to the IRO report. Adrian?
Thank you, Chair. And I think Eddie and I both got confused with this, so what order we would take it during the questioning. So I take it we are now on the RO report. Thank you. Just to go back on what I said before, I think the IRO service annual report shows what a fantastic job those people are doing, and it made very, very good reading. Just a couple of questions. I'm curious. It says in the report we're getting an extra IRO post added to meet the needs of unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. I'd be interested to know, is it Medway Council that's funding that, or have we got external government funding to do that? And another thing, there was a 40% increase in the dispute resolution notifications. That's quite a substantial increase. Is there any learning opportunities that could come out of that, please?
Sorry, can I just ask you to repeat the last part of that? Is there any opportunities to...
For learning?
From the learning, from the...
Yes, I mean, I think it's when you've got increases like that, there's obviously a reason behind it. 40% is quite a substantial increase in those dispute resolution notifications. But I rather than point it out as something that's going wrong, I would rather that we took the attitude that it's an opportunity to learn from that experience. So I'd like to know what we can learn from that.
Okay. If I take that last point about the dispute resolution notifications, I think we've been more confident about raising them in the last year than perhaps in previous years. I think we have been citing ourselves as being in a good service now, so the accountability that we hold the services to is probably greater. We expect more accountability when things are drifting. I mean, overall, I think I'm pleased to see in the last year that we're raising disputes, for want of a better word. We're challenging the services and teams and workers about drift and delay much more than we used to be. We used to be talking about, you know, late notifications of reports for meetings and stuff like that. We're being much more purposeful, I think, in what we're challenging now, and saying actually this child's issue to do with this or their care plan is drifting, and actually we're now holding you to account in a much more sort of stronger way than we were before. We have had quite a drive on those DRNs in the last year. So I think that's been something we've wanted to always focus down on, and I think we finally got there more strongly in the last year, and I think it's not a bad thing. I think we've got further to go. We could actually increase them more, and I think there are things we could do about that to actually, because at the end of the day we want children's issues, whatever they are, be it about resolving their pocket money or saying actually something's really drifting in terms of an assessment that's due for court or something. We want this to be much more proactively dealt with and responded to more effectively. So I see that as a good movement forward, really, rather than something to worry about underlying problems. And my understanding is that the post is now in establishment, which is a post that was built into the service to note the change of Medway's position to unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. And with the other things I mentioned in the report about children's care arrangements being increased away from where they're living, and that's to do with the national sufficiency issue. IROs see children in person. We don't have a system here where we do virtual reviews as the norm. We expect the IROs to go and see children. We expect to try to see them if they're living far away from home quite a lot, and in between reviews. So they are travelling more. So whilst we've got the extra post and we haven't yet hit 60, 65 unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, it's been a very welcome addition because it's meant that caseloads, the numbers of children that IROs are working with have sat at about 60. They're going up because the numbers this year have gone up, but they're sitting at the midpoint, really, of where their caseloads should be nationally. They're between 50 and 70 is the kind of marker. They will be higher in boroughs that do the dual role with child protection sharing, but in the southeast that's tending to be disaggregated out into IRO posts that are just about working with children in care. So my own view is that we've probably got it right in terms of establishment, and it is allowing the IROs to be able to focus down on the children, and it's not an unmanageable task. Once you get to 70 children or above, it becomes very difficult to actually do the quality work that you need to do. And we're in quite a good position, I think, at this moment in time in terms of caseloads being manageable. And they're not very, very low either, which is, they're in the midpoint, which is a good place to be. Does that answer your question?
Sharon, and if we can all, when we're speaking, just pull our mics. I'm moving away as I'm saying it, but if we can all speak really clearly into them. Right.
Yeah, we're just struggling to hear on this end, that's all, Amanda. That's all.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you. I feel like this is, I'm not doing a scrutiny committee today, I'm doing a praise committee, and I am going to step inside this one and the fostering as well, but you'll see why. It is just a comment. It's so lovely to see that you're welcoming the Mockingbird model, and I'm really pleased that we're going forward with the SEN one as well, because it really is making a difference. Talking to foster carers and the impact it's having on the children, it really is making a difference, and it's really showing that although that it's not perfect, that we're listening to foster carers and we're seeing the outcome in the children. So, again, well done. I might scrutinise you on the next item, but at the moment we're okay. Thank you.
George?
Thank you. I can hear much better now. You want to get one of these? They're great. Yeah, I'm new to children's service. I'm subbing today, so thank you for the report. Can I just get some clarification around the independence of independent review officers and the numbers that you have? I've read in two places, one where there are 8.6 or 9 IROs dealing with 60 hours of casework each, and we have 200 and say 300 children in care. And I read somewhere else where there are 108 IROs. So can you just give me a little bit of clarity about what they are and what they do, and where there is deprivation of liberty, are they taking the place there of a relative person's representative in the adult scenario for children? So just it's just really the independence of the review officer that I was concerned about, because we're reviewing ourselves, if you understand what I'm saying. If they're their officers and they're reviewing what we're doing, are they independent?
That's a good question, and it's been muted since the handbook came in 2010 as to whether the independent reviewing officer service should be cited in local authorities or outside. Lots of directors across the country had different views about it, but they've stayed within local authorities. They've not moved outside. The culture, I would say, in Medway, which I came here 4.5 years ago, is an extremely respectful one towards the independence of our role. And we're able to challenge and we're able to speak to very senior officers if we need to about the welfare of the children that are in care. So we don't feel at any time that we're closed down or that we're managed by the organisation. In fact, quite the opposite. We feel we're very respected and our views are very valued. And that goes from heads of service all the way down and up to Leanne's level. So we feel we are given that level of independence. We can access our own independent legal advice. We have a service level agreement. Medway has a service level agreement with another local authority. So if we think that Medway isn't undertaking its duties to children legally, we can talk to independent legal advisors in another local authority. And we ultimately can go out to CAFCAS. We can refer matters to CAFCAS if we feel that the authority isn't doing what they should be doing for looked after children. We haven't needed to do that because things do get resolved at an earlier level.
And the numbers?
The numbers of children in care?
No, the numbers of officers. Either the 9 or the 108, how many are there?
There's 8 full-time IROs, and there's 1 person working 3 days a week, so that's 0.6.
Yeah.
And we have a little bit of capacity from the fostering IRO who reviews foster carers every year, who can hold up to 12 cases. So I think it works out at whatever's recorded here, which is whatever was put down in the thing. So that's
I've just read 108 there somewhere. It's got 108 IROs. I couldn't compute the two. Can I just follow up with those? Can you tell me, if any, how many reports has an officer brought forward that have actually gone legal, where they've represented the child in court or anywhere like that? Has there been any evidence of that at all?
So we don't. The IRO service, we're not working in the services and representing the local authority by taking matters to court. That's done in the services. That's done by the social workers and team managers. But the views of the IROs are canvassed quite regularly in care proceedings. There have been occasions where we haven't always agreed with the local authority's plans. They're not comfortable conversations, but they take place. And there are times when we have been quite brave and we've said, no, we think this is the wrong approach. And we talk to children's guardians who are independently appointed to represent children in care proceedings and in the family courts. So there's a very strong working relationship between the local members of CAFCAS, the guardians in CAFCAS, and the independent reviewing officers who'll pick up the phone and talk to guardians on a very regular basis.
And did I read that right, that they do take the place of a relative person's representative? That's the only way I can describe it. It's like an advocate for the child, where there's nobody else to make those decisions for
Advocacy is part of the IRO role, definitely. We also help children refer to commission services for advocates, for formal advocates. There's also advocacy that can be put into place for children from other areas. And we also make sure that if children don't have any family, like parents or interested relatives that are adults, we can put them in touch with independent visitors who can see them on an independent basis as well. So there's quite a lot of information. We also help children make complaints, formal complaints if necessary.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Crozier, I'll come in there too. Medway has tried really hard to make sure that they are independent reviewing officers. So Amanda and her team, through the structure, report to me. They don't report to the operational side because otherwise the operational side could be marking their own homework. So we've tried really, really hard to make sure that independent reviewing officers can undertake their task without fear or favour. And I think if you look at Ofsted's reports back into what they've found, the IROs provide a very good second layer of quality assurance. They are independent in that sense. Pay and rations, of course, through Medway Council.
Douglas.
Thank you very much for the report. My question is more to do with the aspirations around the care plan. As somebody that spends a lot of his time helping young people formulate care plans, one of the biggest issues they say about care plans is, what's the point of this document if nobody is going to be held accountable or act out my wishes, feelings, and concerns with the care plan? Medway, as we all know here, is aspiring to be a mammoth place where health inequalities are challenged all the time. And we do know that the wider determinants of health around social care, where we live, where we work, all these things have a big impact on our health outcomes as well. So the first question is around the breadth and depth of these care plans. Who has access to these care plans? Are they going to be shared with social services, who also have their own care plan? Health have their own care plan. Education have their own plans. Do your aspirations go far enough and deep enough so that that document is shared across multiple services, so young people's wishes and feelings can be observed, particularly around, say, things such as dentistry, access to right care at the right time as well? Yeah, so it's a bit aspirational, but we're trying to push the envelope here in terms of what is capable. Technology is there, enable for us to share documents and data across different systems. So what's your thinking around that, and what's your strategy?
So at the moment, yes, they are shared. We regularly have stakeholders who are not necessarily always at the review meetings because they are child-led. And if children don't want their school there, they don't come. But we will consult with the schools. We will look at their personal educational plans. We will consult with health. We will look at, it's a statutory requirement to have a health assessment for at least once a year, for younger children twice a year. For older children, they can refuse those in line with their maturation and their wishes and feelings. But generally speaking, all of those areas are always covered off and considered as part of the reviewing cycle. Although not necessarily at the review meeting, because they are child-led and they are done with who the child wants present. We review where children are living. We want to see the sort of care arrangements that they have. The report sort of talks about the fact that we are wanting to develop a care plan that's a standalone document rather than it being attached to a social work report. That's the mechanics of it, really. And we would like to strengthen those further so that where we have other plans, such as the ones you've mentioned, such as education, health, care plans, that they find iteration in a much more sort of well-written way and a simpler way for children and for their families to understand. Because we work a lot still with families, even though they're not able to look after their children, we're still including parents because we understand that children often and will normally gravitate back to their parents when they're older, and the connectivity they feel to their families is huge, particularly as they get older. We help them to do that in a safer way. So that's the work that we're looking at. I mean, we've started by putting a request to start that work on an individual care plan, and we're just forming a working party to get together with all the stakeholders to think about what care plans should start to look like and how we find that iteration of all the other plans in them, and to make them as good as possible. I agree. I think if they were very child-friendly and they were simpler, I think the children would buy into them more. I think where pathway plans are done with 16 pluses, where the young people sit down and write those with their workers, they're very well received, is my understanding. So I think what we want to do is make them more child-friendly, more user-friendly, and make sure that our children are at the heart of producing some of those plans and understand them and get those copies of them. At the moment, from every statutory review, once the IRO writes that up, it's written as a letter to the child, it's written in child-friendly language to the children, but it also talks about who's going to do what, where and when, and with those clear recommendations written to them in a way that they understand rather than just jargon, for want of a better word.
So that was everyone on my list. So if we're happy, then I'll go to the Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. This committee notes that the IRO Service Annual Report 2024 to 2025.
Is that seconded? And agreed? Then if we go to the annual fostering report next, and I think if we start with, if you can answer Eddie's question from earlier, have you got, do you need it repeated? You got it?
I've got it. Thank you very much, Councillor Peake. So I believe you asked me a question around training of foster carers, the demand, and their ability to become foster carers, whether they need to have a qualification or not. In respect of the demand, nationally, we continue to see a huge demand. Unfortunately, we don't have foster carers who wish to come forward. So we've seen a decrease over the last 3 years, and we are struggling with it locally. However, this is why we decided to join forces with other local authorities, and we are part of the Southeast Southeast Hub to be able to recruit together for foster carers. In respect of our training, we continue to develop our training offer to foster carers because we acknowledge that each child is individual. So we want to equip our foster carers to have all the skills and knowledge that they require to provide that care to our children. We also want our foster carers to be local because we believe children should remain in Medway. That will give them the opportunity to access our schools, to see their families, friends, access our health provisions as well. We work very closely with partner agencies, including health and education, and if they have any training offers that are available for our foster carers, they also offer them. However, having said all of that, foster carers have to go through a rigorous process to be approved as foster carers, which are in line with the fostering regulations. So sometimes, unfortunately, some prospective foster carers decide not to progress with this.
Just clarification, Chair. So thank you for that comprehensive reply. So you've obviously identified there is a considerable gap between demand and you've got things in place, so good. How big is that gap though? What sort of ratio are we talking? Have you got any way of saying it to me that I can appreciate?
If I were to give you Medway's numbers, I believe my colleague will confirm we have over 500 children in care, and I believe we have around 100 fostering households. So that's a huge difference just for Medway. But we continue to be ambitious. We really want to increase our offer for foster carers and increase our households of foster carers.
Adrian?
Thank you, Chair. And I think I'm going to be a bit like Sharon on this item. Whilst, yes, we're here to scrutinise the performance, but I also think we should give praise where praise is due. And I think as of the end of last year, I became a member of Medway's fostering panel. And I've got to say I've been really impressed with the professionalism of the social workers that report, and also the quality of the reports that go to the fostering panel. They are very detailed, almost embarrassingly so when you're looking at people's personal lives and family connections. But I think it's right and proper that that should be done, because we've got to ensure that our children are at all times in a very, very safe environment. And I particularly like to praise our foster carers, and I'd like to highlight that a very large proportion of the young people going into the fostering service have extreme challenges and handicaps, and the love and stability that the foster carers give to those challenged children is absolutely amazing. And you know, I've never gone away yet from a fostering panel without being absolutely amazed and wondering at how brilliant the foster carers are. I can't praise them highly enough. I'd certainly support the use of the Mockingbird programme, and I think we're a fair way there already, because I'm picking up that many of the carers already have informal contact groups and WhatsApp programs, but I think to extend that to the children as well, I think would be brilliant. And certainly the support that carers get from those networks is very important, and the sort of informal mentoring that goes on, and that has to be a good good for the service. But yes, I'm afraid this one I can't find anything to criticise. But I really like to put on record my appreciation of all involved in the service. You're doing a fantastic job. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mark?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report, very, very detailed. When looking on page 22 about registration, deregistrations, looking at a quick scan of the numbers, 27 in, 38 out, it looks quite bad. But then breaking down for the reasons, and it's very pleasing to see that we got 13 ceased fostering because of special guardianship. And I know with that, a lot of that's to do with normally close family members. So just wondering, with regards to that 13, were they all close family members? Because I know you're now breaking down newly appointed, generic and newly approved kinship sort of household. So with regards to the numbers. Also on the initiated by fostering services, I know it's only a small number, but when you're looking at only 38 in total, it would be nice to know what that breakdown is. Is that so generic households, or is it kinship households, to understand them numbers a bit better. I just wondered, when someone goes into special guardianship, I know legally we don't have a responsibility, but do we still keep an arm's length sort of watch in brief to make sure that's going all right? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. In respect of the 13, the number, in special guardianship orders that were made, usually they're extended family and friends, so they could be an uncle, an aunt, equally they could be a very close family friend, and they take over the care of the child, therefore they do not want to be the local authorities' foster care. That would mean that they would have the main responsibility for the child. When they cease to be our foster carers and they become legally special guardians, they are entitled to access services from us. So through our kinship and post-order special guardianship team, they can join coffee mornings, training sessions, they can ask for additional support. For example, if they feel the young person, the child requires some therapy, some counseling, depending on their needs, they can contact our team and then we can offer this support. So we have a various range of support. And if you remember in my earlier presentation, I did say that next year we want to focus more on our kinship offer. This is linked specifically to those special guardians. This is exactly what we want to do. We want to develop the local offer. The 7 foster carers that we have deregistered were generic foster carers, so they were not family and friends.
Jim?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the reports. Very detailed and very helpful to fill in a lot of the understanding in the whole system. Just a couple of quick points, really. You talk about wanting to increase the number of in-house foster carers because you don't want to rely on the independent sector. Just wondered, do you have any sort of figures on the comparison between your own service and the independent sector? Because I presume that obviously they can fulfill when you can't fulfill the need. But of course, there are hundreds across the country of independent fostering agencies. I just wondered if you have any data about how you compare in Medway to the independents.
Can I ask more specifically what you're referring to? Because we do have our internal data. My colleagues from commissioning team, they are responsible for overseeing our independent fostering agencies and they know exactly the numbers. But the biggest difference for us is the financial difference. So having an in-house foster care is significantly better for us and for our children as opposed to an independent fostering agency.
Yeah, okay. I was just really finding out if part of the reason is rather than just relying on the independent sector to fill in the gaps, it's actually it is a financial reason that you feel you could do better with more income effectively to do your service. And yeah, the only other question was just about when you talk about diverse backgrounds. I presume what you're meaning by that is just underrepresented backgrounds to be able to place children. Is that right?
Coming back to your first question, we have, for example, increased this year our finance policy. We have reviewed it. That hasn't been updated for a number of years because we did recognize our foster carers require a better financial package. We listened to their feedback, and we continue to be committed to reviewing that yearly. We want, going forward, to try and offer them a better offer. This year, we have also agreed that, for example, that they will only pay half of the council tax, and they have a better training package. We will never be able to fully match the independent fostering agencies, but we listen to our foster carers. We have had, for example, in December, our reward ceremony where we celebrated our foster carers. We recognized the number of years of service for Medway. Our longest foster carer has worked for us for 44 years. We value them every day, so this is something that we continue to be committed to them. In respect of the diverse background, like last year we have completed a number of marketing activities all over Medway and Kent. We have approached various communities with different religious background, and they have allowed us to go and promote fostering for Medway, so we are taking into account that. We are also thinking about their identity, what else can we do for our children, because we do acknowledge that Medway is a diverse local authority.
Sharon?
This is just a quick one, and I'm going to carry on with the praise. So, sitting on the fostering panel, how you can show that you're doing the best job that you can is the amount of children that get permanency that I have to sit there. And it is a double-edged sword because we then lose our foster carers for permanency, whether it's kingship or adoption, or even if it's for long-term fostering, we're still taking them off where they can take another placement. But if we have to have a double-edged sword, what a wonderful double-edged sword to have, because then that impacts the rest of society, because them children being settled and know they're going to be settled there and staying put, and the post-18, you know, you're doing something right, so that's amazing, so well done.
Thank you. We do acknowledge that once we have permanency for children, that takes the foster carers in terms of their availability. However, we have balanced that, and we believe that it's important for children to have a forever home.
So then that moves us back to me handing back to Sharon as Vice Chair.
I don't have to turn the page yet. I move that this committee notes the Fostering Service Annual Review Report 2024-2025.
And is that seconded and agreed? Then we are on to item 6, which is a member's item. Oh, sorry, Adrian.
Madam Chair, could I crave a comfort break for 5 minutes,
yes,
please?
Yes, that was on my list to do now, and I skipped it, so yeah, perfect.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Item number 6, which is the implications of removal of exemption from VAT for private and independent schools in Medway from January 25. And Adrian Hall is introducing this.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm pleased to present this report to the committee, which explores the potential impact of the government's decision to remove the VAT exemption for independent schools from January of this year, 2025, specifically focusing on schools in Medway. So this report was produced in response to the questions raised by Councillor Joy, and it considers whether the change has affected the number of school places available in both independent and state-maintained schools. Also, the financial impact on the council in relation to special educational needs pupils placed in independent schools, and the level of engagement the local authority has had with independent schools. We contacted 5 independent schools for information to furnish in this report, but only 2 of those schools responded. Based on the data that we received, we were able to conclude that the removal of VAT exemption appears to have had minimal impact so far. At this point, I'll invite any questions or comments. Thank you.
Mark first, and Douglas.
Thank you, Chair. My reasoning behind bringing this question stemmed to start with from what was happening with Bryony School. And the concern with this was, yes, some financial impact because it is challenging for a local authority when it comes to children's services and education, but also the impact on the children. So while this was getting prepared, and there's some lovely numbers in this, I took the time to actually go and meet one of the schools that actually responded and had spoke to the school and to get some insight into the impact actually at the school level. And the school I went to see is probably the largest independent school we've got in Medway, and is the second oldest independent school in the UK, dating back nearly as old as the cathedral, and potentially beyond that. So when I spoke to them, the impact they said it was having, so when you're looking at the numbers, their numbers have dropped. So if you look at the end of year data, their numbers were quite stable, around 671, 672 in the 2 years previously, and this year dropped to 572, which is a drop in 100 children on their numbers. And I spoke to them, what has the impact been, and to actually find out that it wasn't just the VAT that got added on, that they also had their charitable status removed at exactly the same time, which also had a financial impact. And they said the main impact is not on the parents that can afford it. They're still going, it's not really affecting them. The main impact is on the parents, and I am aware of there's a number of councillors on both sides of the divide that sent their children to independent schools. But they didn't send them because they had bundles of money, they sent them because they made the choice to sacrifice things like holidays, luxuries, to make sure that their children had a choice on a good start in life. And that's a choice that lots of parents that do make this. Also, with these schools, is they're allowed that they, because of their smaller class sizes, they are actually quite good for SEN children and special needs children, and a lot of local authorities, including ourselves, send them to them areas. And these children, their background is that a lot of time upheaval causes them great distress. And I didn't know the numbers of how many children we may have had at Bryony that may have been in this boat, but the potential upheaval would cause them some distress. So when they're saying it's a negligible incident, but the 2 schools that have actually answered, 15% drop in numbers. And that doesn't take into consideration the 78 extra ones that also lost their places when Bryony's closed. And we have information on here that we know that a deficit of 5 going from independent to maintained schools So that gives us 5 of them. And on the closure at Bryony, we know what happened with 3 of them. So out of a total of 198 drop in children numbers, we know what happened to 8 children. And again, there's 198 children where, as a local authority, every child matters. And we've got 190 children that we haven't got a clue if they live in the Medway, if they need any support, what's happened to them. We don't know how many of them families have got special educational needs. How are they being impacted by potential changes? Yes, more so to Bryony. But there's also a lot of children that were supported by these schools. So I do know that schools used to give bursaries and scholarships. And one of our ex-councillors actually got a scholarship at King's School due to his links with the cathedral. They've gone because they've swallowed some of the costs, but there's no extra money. So again, the most disadvantaged children in our society are the ones that are being affected by this. And these numbers don't actually tell what is the impact. I can understand that there's no impact on VAT to Medway Council, but changing of the school is the smaller schools that take most of the SEN children are the ones at most at risk because they haven't got the ability to absorb the additional costs.
Sorry, Councillor Joy, I think the purpose of the report is to scrutinise the impact, so I think we can talk about the numbers within.
The report doesn't show the impact on the children, it just shows numbers.
Okay, but neither does you proselytising. We can talk about the numbers and things that are within the report, but we can make all the points around it. I don't think it addresses the...
Okay, so our last question is that what do we know about the 190 children that are not accounted for in this report between that have gone in the last year because of the VAT going on to private schools?
Thank you. So, I can speak to Bryony. We have been given the details of the children who have not contacted us, and the team will have a piece of work over the summer towards the start of the academic year where we'll be contacting families to find out where they've landed to ensure that they have secured alternative school spaces, and if they need support from the local authority at that point, we will help them find a place through the local authority's admissions process. And we will then also contact, again, the other independent schools who we've not had information from to see whether or not we can support their families in the way that we have done with these children, from these 3 children that have left Bryony, and we have placed them through the local authority's admissions process. So there is some work to be done, and we will be doing that later on in the summer in the admissions team to find out where these children have landed to ensure that they do have suitable provision for September.
And that'll also include the 100 children missing from King's?
Well, some of those children would have come through our system anyway, but yes, if they need support, we will contact them to find out if they need support, and they'll provide us with those details. But if they're in an independent school, those wouldn't automatically be provided to the local authority, but we'd have to request that, and if they do provide that, we will support those families.
Okay.
So I've got Douglas.
Sorry, Mark, I did try to get there before you. I just want to clarify, do I need to sit this one out? My son attends King's. I should have declared it. I just didn't read the top line. So if you want me to leave, tell me now. So I do apologise for that.
Yeah, I mean, as long as we don't make any personal references.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much for that clarification. I just got one thing to add regarding the report. In the sense that we are out of the EU, and the EU VAT exemption mandate means things such as education, we're no longer bound by the EU directives in there. But back to some of the families and the unknowns, I think it's important that anyone considering those options has the capabilities of adjusting, because they're already thinking about going there, the cost of living. There's so many other determinants that are at play here, so I don't want to really politicize the whole thing. It has to play out. Things will normalize. There's a high cost of living out there. There are lots of things to consider. But I think on the whole, I'm supportive of the work, and I'm keen to find out what happens in the long term. Thank you.
So I've got Adrian next, but if I can make reference to the letter that we spoke about for Bryony, I worked with quite a few families throughout that Bryony closure, and although none of them took up the place, and the families that I was speaking to, they took up other independent schools, they were all really appreciative of having that kind of dialogue with the council and that option and knowing what their options were. So I just thought it was good that we did that. And then, yeah, if I can go to Adrian.
Thank you very much, Chair. Whilst the impact of Labour's vindictive and counterproductive imposition of VAT on school fees may not have impacted Medway severely at the moment, I think it has potential for the future, because I think those who have already got their children in independent schools, particularly in those years where they're coming up to the examinations, are probably getting themselves in debt just so as not to interfere with their children's education. And I think, you know, this is going to be a slow burning problem, but it is going to be a very much a problem in the future. Because nationally, I did a bit of research in the last couple of days. I found out that at least 10,000 pupils have been forced out of the independent schools, and some 50 schools have already closed. And the irony of this is that the perverse effect of this experiment in class warfare is it's actually the poorer parents that have been more affected. Those who are genuinely affluent have been able to pay their school fees for years in advance and thus avoid the VAT. Those parents on much lower incomes cannot afford to do that and are bearing the brunt of it. So that's very much an issue. And also, I read that the top 50 independent schools held 550 million in advance fees last year. And this is up from 121 million in 2023. So obviously, a lot of very rich parents have taken advantage of this. But going back to Medway, because it's, as you rightfully pointed out, Chair, it's Medway that we are concerned about. In paragraph 5.5 of the report, it states that the financial impact on the council placing SEN children in independent special schools is significant, and that Medway Council spent 18 million on independent specialist provision last year. Can the officers please tell me how much the council is likely to have to spend in the current financial year, please?
Just under 21 million. Just under 21 million.
21 million. Well, that is quite a substantial.
But can I just clarify that children that we place with SEND, the schools are exempt from that VAT because they're local authority placed. So it's not the VAT that's caused the increase, it's the demand that's caused the increase.
Then I think we'll go to the Vice Chair unless anybody else, unless I haven't got to anybody else. Did you indicate, Eddie?
So thank you, Chair. I'm just trying to formulate some thoughts here. I'm glad, you know, to get that reply. It's not facts getting away with a good scaremongering story. This is pure conjecture from the people opposite. We literally do not know what the impacts are. You just assume, because it suits your political beliefs or whatever, that you'll have to wag your finger going, it's because of that, blah, blah, blah. Am I right in understanding from what the officer said, when people do not have their children go back to the private schools, they don't volunteer to actually inform you of their reasons? Am I right in assuming that we actually literally do not know? And these parents have choices, and I'm very keen always on people taking responsibility for their own choices, including parents, about their own budgets, about what they can and cannot afford. And it's up to them to decide if they can still reasonably afford to go to private education or not. That, to me, is where the onus of responsibility is. And I certainly don't want this assumption that this is going to have this massive impact. and it hasn't happened on Medway. You refer to a slow burner. Well, let's wait and see what happens, and let's have some facts to back this up, please. Thank you.
Yep. So I can confirm that in regards to the admissions process, when families are leaving any school, they're not required to notify the local authority as to their reasons for wishing to transfer to a school. So once they make an application or they move on, they're not required to give us that information. So we can't accurately determine at any point what the cause might be for someone wanting to move school.
So, Chair, can I just come back to that? Is it quite possible some of these people don't even live in Medway, so they're not actually directly even our concern, specifically? If we, on the whole, including members opposite, were often referenced in terms of those that live in Medway. So let's stick with that in this.
I have to come back on that because the 50 schools that have closed up and down is a fact. And that is a direct response to the VAT and the losing their charitable status and also having to pay more in national insurance charges for their staff. And the estimate of 10,000 children have been taken out of independent schools is pretty accurate figures of people who've done that research. It is a fact. You've destroyed the education of tens of thousands of children now, potentially, for political
Okay, I think we're going to argue across. Councillor Koza, and then
yeah, just a couple of points. No, just one point. I won't make the other point because I think it's slightly just.
Is it a question?
Yeah, well, it is. It is a question. Yeah. I wonder whether the officers asked the schools what impact it had on the staff. How many staff did each of those schools lose?
No, that wasn't a part of the information that we requested, so we weren't given that information.
Would that be useful to know that as well? Because I think that would be quite significant.
Can I just clarify? So independent schools are private businesses. We have no remit. They don't have to give us the information. We are responsible for ensuring all children and young people in Medway have access to an education. It is down to parental choice. Bryony was slightly different because Bryony was closing, and therefore we contacted and we gave contact details. The school was closing. We were informed of that, so we gave information to all of the parents who had children at Bryony to know that we were here in terms of our admissions protocol. In terms of parents choosing to go to independent or choosing to send their children to independent school and the fluctuation in the numbers, there are a huge number of reasons as to why that is, and you've heard a number of them said this evening, but that is not the local authority's remit. The local authority's remit is about children accessing education, and that is state-maintained education. Independent schools do not fall under the local authority's remit. They're private businesses, so we don't have that information, and they're not bound to give us any of that information.
So Mark, and then Dan, and then I think we'll move on.
Thank you, Chair. Mine's just a point of clarification. The information that we were after and the information we requested was the impact on the children. Adrian has quite openly said that we've not got all that information, and I'm happy to wait till we get the rest of the information to see if we can get that. But I also know that asking the private business for information is not the easiest thing to do because they do shut shop. So the clarification was, it's not about how many schools are closing, it's about the impact on Medway children, and that's why this members item was brought up about impact on the children. And regardless of people losing jobs or anything, that happens in businesses every day of the week. But we're a child-friendly authority, and every single child in Medway counts for every single person that's sitting in this room at this time, as well as a lot of others, and it's just on the impact of the children. That's what I want to clarify. It's about that, not whether people losing money or anything. It's on the impact on the children. Thank you.
Thank you. And absolutely, our role, our responsibility is about knowing where all our young people are and that they are accessing education. And actually, the changes that are coming in with the Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill, which will give every child a unique identifier so that they will be able to be tracked across all agencies will help with that, because this isn't just about children missing that could be in independence or not. This is about our elective home educated children, our children missing education. So the changes that are coming in with the bill will enable local authorities to have a much clearer overview of all children resident in the area, regardless of the provision that they are in, and give us a much greater handle on that.
And Dan, is it a question? Yeah.
It's just a quick point of clarity. I haven't spoken to you, but glad. But, you know, we've got to make sure people know that Bryony didn't close because of that. So, and that's in the paper, that's very clear. It was nothing to do with the fact that they closed. So it's because of the junior site being, with the landlord being sold, that's what took that school down. But, you know, just my final point, Chair, and then you can shut my mic off. You know, Councillor Goldwyn, you're worried about the 50 schools and same as Mark as well. Of course, we're worried about all children's education. But I would like to hear you say about the children that are in our schools where the roof is collapsing and the heating's off and they're in huts outside for the last 14 years where no investment in schools has been done. That's what this authority is about. We will reach out to all the kids from wherever they are, Councillor Joy, wherever they are, to make sure they're okay. And we've got that reassurance tonight, whether they're from private, whether they're from, as long as they're under our control as a council, of course we make sure, I would hope the council would make sure that everyone's okay. But I'm not going to spend hours worrying about the other schools across the country that may have decided to close for whatever reason.
Then in that case, I will move to the Vice Chair.
Thank you. The committee is asked to note the director's comments in response to the members' item.
Is that seconded? And agreed? Then we are on to item 7, which is the proposed changes to the Education Travel Assistance Policy and Post-16 Transport Policy Statement, outcome following consultation. And that is again Adrian. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this report presents the outcome of the recent statutory consultation regarding proposed changes to the Education Travel Assistance Policy and Post-16 Transport Policy Statement. 5 proposals were put forward, 3 relating to changes in the current policies and 2 aimed at providing greater clarity and understanding of existing processes and procedures. The consultation was conducted over the required period of 6 weeks during term time and included an online survey which was published on the Council's website. The survey was also shared directly with all parents currently receiving travel assistance where email addresses were available. In addition, an engagement session was held with the Medway Parent Carer Forum, providing an opportunity to respond to questions and encourage participation in the survey. We received a total of 225 responses, reflecting a range of views, with some respondents expressing agreement and others disagreeing with some of the proposed changes, and this is reflected in the report. We believe this report provides a comprehensive summary of the consultation process, the feedback received, and the key themes identified. We invite the committee to consider the report and provide their comments, which will be incorporated into the final version submitted to Cabinet for determination. I will now invite any questions. Thank you.
Lisa?
Sorry, you know it would be me. So firstly, I'd like to say really thank you for the report, and thank you for taking into consideration the changes that the forum put forward before the consultation went live. I think there's still a lot that I've thought about, and I found some bits earlier on that I've emailed you, Adrian, because I didn't realise, but there were some spelling mistakes, I think maybe in there slightly. I think I'd like everyone to remember that reading the report, many part-time timetables are not decided by parents. It's decided by that, so I really thank you again for putting that in about being reviewed on a case-by-case basis. 16 to 18 transport is something that needs to be resolved nationally, not something that needs to be resolved locally, because it's, you know, it's a bigger picture. And it's something that, as a national network, has been raised. Removing transport contribution is not included, but I think it needs to have a clear flow chart. So if you know, parents aren't paying their fee, we need to be clear exactly what's going to happen and what stages. And maybe in the documentation when they're approved for the transport originally. I think many concerns shared that the panel needs a voice. So the independent panel or the reviewing panel with lived experience. So I do wonder how that will be. I also read something around concerns that if they don't currently have any HCP, that there will be initial assessments. But I just wonder who's going to do that, and also with the reviewing panel, if it is internal staff, how they're going to have the capacity to be able to do that, knowing that the capacity is at max already.
So in regards to the EHCPs or the children that may not have EHCPs, as part of the process for determining eligibility for travel assistance, the team currently have to in some way assess whether or not, based on the information that we have available, the child meets the threshold for travel assistance. We do seek information and support from our SEN colleagues to determine whether or not a child meets that threshold, and we will continue to do that. I think as part of the independent panel, we are seeking to have great coverage across the directorate in regards to panel members, those from the SEN department, also social care. We'll have Ed Sykes who will be a part of that. So we're aiming to have a breadth of knowledge and experience that will make up that panel, that will hopefully be able to make the best decisions possible in the best interest of the children. So we are exploring that. We are speaking to individuals about the panel makeup to ensure that we have the right people making the best decisions.
I understand that completely. My biggest concern is our families at the moment struggle to get hold of their SEN officer because they're busy, and I appreciate that they're really busy at the moment. So that is a problem. And then obviously EPs are obviously at full max as well. So they're two teams, two departments like kind of down already. And I just think if they're so busy, how are they going to have time to do that as well?
I think the way that we're going to manage that is by having a pool of panel members. So we're hoping to have between 8 and 10 panel members who can rotate. So we'll have a standing chair of the panel, but then we'll be able to rotate the members of the panel to ensure that we have coverage and that members of the panel aren't burnt out or aren't able to meet that duty. So we're hoping by having that pool, we can substitute and have rolling members who are able to support in that regard. So that's the aim and that's the thought, to ensure that we don't, as you said, overburden those departments that are already quite stretched. Thank you.
Mark?
Just looking at the report, it's really detailed, and thank you for it. On the options 4.1, the third one, to make it clear that SEND travel assistance will only be provided at the start and the end of the normal school day in accordance with statutory duties. With regards to childhood obesity, that we encourage children to get involved in sports. With a lot of schools, especially send children going to mainstream schools, they do the sports outside of normal working hours. This basically will limit them to do things within school hours. I just wondered if anything's been taken into consideration with potentially trying to make children a bit more active. And it's not as easy for certain children with SEN to making sure they're getting home safely, whereas more of the mainstream ones, I do know that they're responsible for getting them home, but normally they've got a bus pass, and a bus pass is active whether you go home at 3:10 or you go home at 4:30. But if it was specific transport, is that been taken into consideration when looking to adopt this policy within the duties? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Joyce. So the policy currently has the provision where, in line with statutory guidance, transport is only provided at the start and beginning of the end of the day. So that's not a change in the policy. We're we're not hoping to change anything in that regard. It's just a clarification at the moment where we have children who are on part-time timetables, or those children who may not be leaving school or starting school at the normal time of day. This is what this clarification seeks to address. In terms of extracurricular activities or after-school clubs, the guidance, the DfE guidance, supports that local authorities don't provide travel assistance to those particular excursions or events, but it's home to school travel, so it's for travel to school and travel from school to home, and that's what the local authority will continue to provide and support families with.
George?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Leah, and thank you, Adrian, for the report and for the work that both you and your teams are doing, and also Celia, that you're driving as the Assistant Director. I think it's, just to preface, I think it's difficult, right, taking decisions around send transport, and we know from Lisa's first-hand experience and others, it can be very emotive subject, and any change can sometimes be difficult, and often, you know, there is a need both for officers and the administration, and I recognise that, to balance both the importance of taking political decisions that are in protection of the council and in line with the statutory duties, but also balancing that alongside the needs of the community. And I think particularly under item 4, the proposed change 4, I think that's very much the case, where I think we're trying to get to a place where we're almost in the middle ground. Other authorities nearby obviously have actually removed the post-16 transport and taken that as a political decision, and I think I support the administration's intention of keeping that within there, and I think that the move to that, particularly around the unrecoverable debt, is really important, because at the moment it's not sustainable running the service such as that. So I'm in support of that. I'm just interested in terms of the wider piece, just in terms of the appeals, because I know there are a number of members from across the council that have got significant concerns about that. I can understand that, and I hear those concerns, but I can also see the necessary change, in my view, about looking at moving to a different appeal system, away from that of a committee, and more to speed up the pace of this for officers, but also in terms of ensuring that there is independence and members aren't sitting necessarily within that process, in terms of it being a committee of the council, so to speak. I'm just interested in terms of how that will be implemented, if there's been any thought process about how that, if the Cabinet decides to proceed with this change, how that would be implemented in terms of panel members, in terms of the sort of speed of that change, and anything that might happen over the sort of initial 12-month period to review anything that might not work with that change, and also ensuring that we're collecting feedback from members of the public when they're experiencing that different way of working, noting that the authority for a number of years has obviously had the School Transport and Curriculum Appeals Committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So I think the important thing to note here is, as you've mentioned, I think the change here is one to bring the council more closely in line with the DfE statutory guidance, which simply says that the panel needs to be independent from the original decision. So that's the real thought and the real driver behind making this change. So in having senior council officers on the panel, one of the things that we are hoping will really bring transparency and keep the process moving forward is that we will have support from our colleagues in legal services, so they will still be a part of the appeals process. Democratic services will still manage and administrate the appeals process. So the real change is the representation on the panel, but in regards to the actual process of how appeals work and the mechanism, that will maintain, or that will be the same in regards to the transparency. We'll have support from the people that know legally what we're supposed to be doing, and will ensure that the panel members execute their function as they're supposed to. And as always, the appeals will be minuted and will be available should they be required. And we will review the policy annually, which we always do, which will include any feedback from the Medway Parent Carer Forum, which is normally the first point of contact to hear from our families, and that will inform any changes or any review going forward.
Thank you, Adrian. As I said, that's a very comprehensive response. I'm really pleased to hear that the process, particularly working with colleagues in the Democracy and Governance Directorate, will continue to be involved in that piece of work. So I think it's a comprehensive answer. Thank you, Chair.
Sharon?
It's just a quick question, I suppose. Me and Lisa have had discussions about this lots of times, and I agree it is a national thing. I do think send bus passes and rail passes should be allowed to be used before 9 o'clock to get people to education. But I also, as a personal experience, having 3 children in that age bracket that were at 3 different schools and colleges, and as a non-driver as well, I feel we need to work with the parents, carers and form just to keep an eye that people aren't just falling out of the system, because let's face it, sometimes it can be hard to get any teenager to school if they've got that as well. And I just worry that because we want these young people to achieve the maximum and have education to the max, I just wonder, we just need to keep an eye that these won't start falling off, and work with parents, carers and Medway parents and carers.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. And that's one of the things that we've talked about internally, is in implementing any change, if that's a decision that's made regarding post-16 travel assistance, that we are very thoughtful and measured before any transport is withdrawn, and that we have conversations with our colleagues in Medway Parent Care Forum, and that we work with families and work with parents throughout the process to ensure that we are thinking about all the things that might be impacting them, and that we don't just arbitrarily make a decision to withdraw transport. Because as you've mentioned, there are some vulnerable children where transport is the key connector in making sure that they access education. So absolutely, that is on our agenda. Thank you.
So, did I come to you, Adrian? Apologies, Adrian.
No problem. Thank you. Whilst I think most of these changes are eminently sensible, there's one I fundamentally disagree with, and that's a removal of members from the appeals process. And frankly, the statement in the report that appeals are now to be handled by those with specialist in-depth knowledge of complex statutory duties is insulting, to say the least. I have to say that, Adrian. I find that statement quite insulting, I'll be frank with you. And I certainly agree that the council needs to ensure the correct use of scarce resources. That's a very important part of why we're here, but not at the expense of the democratic process. And I think having members on that board gave a truly independent slant on it. And I believe that taking the members off it, a lot of those parents who will be turned down will be very suspicious that all the council officers are in fact doing is following the wishes of the more senior officers in the organisation. And what the parents' perception of it is going to be, I think, has to be taken together, because that will, rightly or wrongly, will be the perception that losing parents will have. They get upset enough at the moment, because I've been on both sides of it. I've sat on the appeals committee many years ago. I've also spoken on behalf of my ward residents in the past, so I've seen it from both sides. The system, I believe, has worked quite well, and I see no reason for change, and I would not be supporting this.
Sorry, can I quickly add, before you guys come back, because I had one question that I was going to ask at the very end, and it was around ensuring that the officers on the panel are actually completely unconnected to the school transport team. So personally, I actually do support taking members out, because I think as much as it might be seen as the council marking their own homework, I also think that it's sometimes seen as there's political interference in there and political biases that play in. So I think the same can be said either way, and I don't think there's any way to get this bang on, but I think taking members out is better. But I do want to make sure that those officers are unconnected to the officers that made the original decision.
Thank you. So firstly, Councillor Galvin, no offence was meant in the paper, and apologies that you feel offended by that statement. What we're trying to do is to ensure that we can process this quickly. I mean, the appeals panel applies the policy. It applies the policy, whoever the decision maker is. And actually, the reality of having members who are also ward councillors and representing, also sitting making the decision, you could argue is also open to some question around their independence. We have to have the panel, the appeals panel decision makers removed and independent of the initial decision. The initial decision is made by the transport team. The transport team sit within Adrian's area. Adrian and the entire transport team will not be part of the appeals panel. It will be strategic heads of service or AD level, and we will work that on a rotation. The appeals will be minuted. We will ask for parents to make submissions to them, and we can share the minutes of the meetings with the parents. Essentially, the panel will continue to apply the policy. The policy has within it some leniency if there are exceptional circumstances. So officers will apply that as well. This is about just making it a more efficient process. If I can just come back on Councillor Jackson's point, I mean, the finances for home-to-school transport are a national problem. The funding formula consultation that's out for council funding is suggesting reviewing the formula for home-to-school transport and the amount of funding that councils get to provide it. So that funding for home-to-school transport is a separate issue that absolutely the councils have to face, and there is essentially a formula being developed to try and address that so that the funding is more appropriately matched. The transport policy, as travel assistance policy, is about travel assistance for our children and young people. What we really want to do, and what the team I know are looking at now, is about independent travel assistance. How we teach independence. What are the other options other than buses, trains and taxis? Medway working to be a 15-minute Medway with transport routes, easy access routes. All of that will help, as will children going to their local mainstream school and not having to be transported to the other side of Kent to go to a school that's appropriate for them. So there's a lot of factors that fit into how we sort the policy. What this is aimed to do is to put clarity around the policy. Not a lot has changed, actually. It's just made it clearer for parents to understand and for officers to implement the policy.
Then George is next, and if we can be brief with both question and response. We'll move on. Oh. George, and then Dan.
Thank you, Chair. A brief question then. At the appeal, who represents the person? Do you want me to say it again? Yeah, sorry. At the appeal, who represents the person that's making the appeal? Who represents the user?
So the parent will continue to be the primary representative of themselves. However, as always has been the case and will continue to be the case.
So do they get
They can make requests for their local MP or councillor to support them, and that will continue to be the case. So they can ask, in the sheet that's sent out to them with the appeal information, it does have a checklist, and they can make a request and say that I am wanting or I'm asking for my councillor to be with me, and that's the parent's decision.
Sorry to cut across you there, sorry. So the argument about the council being in there being some sort of bias, the person appealing has the right to say, as me as the ward councillor, would you represent me in that appeal?
Correct.
Is that what you were talking? But that's still there, is it? You're not taking that away?
No.
So my understanding of this is that councillors at the moment are the decision-making process at that stage 2. That won't be the case anymore, but parents can absolutely still be represented by their councillor in that meeting.
Yeah.
So if you're a parent who wants to apply to school transport, you can contact your local councillor and say, look, my appeal is here, will you come with me? just in a support capacity and to help make the case, that's still fine, but you will be presenting to council officers and not councillors.
So you will be, the person that's representing the appellant, I don't know whether that's the right word, but the person that's making the appeal, that person is obviously biased towards the, I mean, it's obvious that you're going to be biased, you're going to represent them, so...
But they're not making a decision, they're just there, they're there with the parent, or the appellant, they're there with the appellant. So.
Provide if the ward councillor is on the panel, then it's probably obvious that the ward councillor is going to vote for, against.
Mighty.
Sorry, Dan.
I'm there. It's only a quick one about review. Following for George and everyone else, will there be a thorough review of this process, and will that review, including comments from the forum, etc., I would suggest, would it be coming back next year to this panel so that the panel can see, the committee can see what the outcome is and whether what you may improve? Because I think it's a good idea, but what you may improve or what needs to be changed, etc. Not go back to where it was, maybe.
Of course, definitely, yes. We'll be happy to do that. Yes.
Right, then I shall move to the Vice Chair.
Thank you. I move that the committee notes a report and then adds the review that Dan discussed.
Is that seconded and agreed? Do you want that minuted, Adrian? He'd like it. Adrian wants it minuted that he is a dissenting vote on that policy. That's fine. In which case, we shall move on to item 8, which is the capital budget monitoring round 1, 25 and 26.
Thank you, Chair. I'll keep this introduction brief, but the report details the results of the first round of capital monitoring relating to schemes within the remit of this committee. It was presented to Cabinet on the 29th of July and is based on returns submitted by budget managers and includes forecasts for both the current year outturn and future years until the completion of each scheme. The result of the first round of monitoring is a projected underspend of 846,000 against a total budget of 230 million across the council. But within this, the schemes within the remit of this committee, there's a projected underspend of 207,000. I'm happy to take any questions that members may have. Thank you.
Adrian?
Thank you, Chair. Whilst it's good to see that the capital projects team are still value engineering to reduce costs, and I think the work they did on the Rivermead Stoke scheme of saving 207,000 is very, very good. And out of a scheme budget of 3.3 million, that's quite a substantial saving. What worries me, but part of the capital programme that's under the remit of this committee is 18.5 million, and that saving on that with that amount saving is not so good. And whilst I appreciate that probably there's a lot of value engineering that had to have gone on to get a lot of those other projects on target, in the past we have done much better than this in reducing the costs of the capital programme. I think, Andy, you need to encourage our projects team to sharpen their pencils a bit, because every amount that we can save on this is going to reduce the council's borrowing, and as we'll see from the next item on the agenda, that's quite critical. Thank you.
So I think a couple of things that I would say there. Obviously, from Finance's point of view, of part of their ongoing improvement of things, we are certainly making sure that business cases are brought in for all capital schemes, and in fact for a lot of revenue things. So that's an ongoing thing that we're doing. Probably what I would say here is a lot of the schemes here involve building works, and as we all know, there's a lot of uncertainties. So, and costs can change at any time, and in fact have done so. So I think possibly one of the things that is happening now is we're not able to find quite as many savings. That doesn't mean to say the service aren't trying hard to do that. And obviously, as you'll see from the funding, an awful lot of the funding for the capital programme within this area is through capital grants. So obviously we're trying to make the best use of that money, and I think in finance we've got a good relationship with the service, and I feel that they put a lot of work into trying to make things work. But obviously everybody would like to keep the costs as low as possible to get the best result.
So I think that's everyone that indicated. So if we move to the Vice Chair, please, Sharon.
Thank you. I move that this committee notes the results of the first round of the capital budget monitoring for 2025-26.
Is that seconded and agreed? Then we are on to revenue budget monitoring, round 1, 25-26. And back to you, Andy.
Thank you. As you might know from anyone who attends this committee, this is more alien to me, but I will do my best. And Mariah is here, who's the font of all knowledge. But I'll try and keep this brief as well as an introduction. So, as with the capital budget monitoring, this report was presented to Cabinet on the 29th of July and summarises the budget monitoring positions that have been considered by Directorate Management teams based on returns submitted by budget managers for the first round of revenue monitoring for 2025-26. There's a reported overspend across the council of £10.9 million, and within that overall overspend, areas that in the remit of this committee are an overspend of around £4.5 million. The committee should also note that Cabinet instructed the corporate management team to implement urgent actions to bring expenditure back within the budget. And lastly, what I would say is the overall round 1 position is better than reported in recent years. So this time last year it was £16.5 million overspend, the year before £17.3 million. And in both years, the outturn position improved throughout the year. No guarantee that that will happen, but we'd expect some improvement overall. Obviously, we are using exceptional financial support to balance the budget. That is £18.184 million this year, and last year we used £20.2 million. So it still remains a big issue for us at this point in time. I'm happy to try and take any questions, and certainly Mariah and other officers will help out where we can. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, Mark.
Thank you, Chair. We do know that year on year it's really, really hard, because when you forecast, you've got no idea on the children's services how many children you're going to have when the actual financial year starts, and also on the education, you don't know what hidden costs are going to come in. My question is really to do with the education, because currently forecast to overspend by 1.24 million, but in recent announcements by government stating that of the 2.3 billion of funding, 1 billion of that would go to the high dependency fund on education. I just wondered, are we aware of that 1 billion, what percentage is actually come into Medway, and will that help not only get rid of this 1.24 million deficit, but also look at reducing our DSG reserve deficit that's currently running?
Okay, so we did get a share of that allocation. You'll have to forgive me. I can't remember what our share of that allocation is off the top of my head. I can find it and let you know what that is. I can tell you those numbers are actually factored into those forecasts as best as we possibly can. We are seeing huge increases of demand coming through on our high needs block, and that grant funding is ring fenced to the DSG and central spend, so we wouldn't be able to use it to cover the 1.2 as that is general fund and not the DSG and the high needs. Celia, have I missed anything else that I might need to add?
Yeah, no, the overspend in education is because the project team, the assessment and the additional ed psychs that we had brought in to clear the backlog of EHCPs till the end of July, we have extended those till Christmas at the moment. That is not to carry on with the backlog, that was done. But since about May, we've seen a doubling of the requests for EHCP needs assessments. That's nationally seen a doubling, but a doubling of the ones coming in. And what we don't want to do is lose all the good work that we've done getting on top of the statutory 20-week time frame and fall back because of the significant increase. So we wait for the SEND reforms that have been promised in the autumn. The ambiguity or the unknownness about those SEND reforms is what is believed to have prompted the increase in requests from both parents and schools, and our colleagues in the DFE agree that that's happening everywhere. But we've costed that in till Christmas to give us, to be realistic. I mean, if this continues, we'd have to extend it a bit further, so it might be a bit worse, but yeah, we need to see what the reforms say.
And Adrian, if you can ask your question.
I've not got so much a question as just like to make a point. Andy's absolutely right. Normally, in round one, to have a budget pressure of only 11 million would actually be considered to be quite a reasonable position to be in. But what is extraordinary and is unusual in this is, apart from this year, where we borrowed a further 18 million to put in the budget, and the year before, every other time we have not borrowed to spend on revenue. So to be in a position where we've already added another £40 million into the budget, to have a round one pressure of 11 million is quite a dangerous position to be in. What concerns me, if you look at the risk rating at section 8, it's A1. That means that it's very likely and the result is catastrophic. We are on the verge of bankruptcy, and this is a position the council has not been in before, and it worries
was there a
me
question,
deeply.
Councillor Baldwin?
Yes. So the question is, what actions are going to be taken to ensure that we do not have a risk rating of A1 in the future?
I think what I would say is we are at the start of a very robust budget process that's going to go on in the coming months, which will then have a draft budget presented just before Christmas, I believe. It might be earlier than that, November maybe. But I think there's an awful lot of work going on in the background, and that involves all the services, including everyone sitting around this table who is working incredibly hard at making sure that we come out of this position where we depend on EFS as soon as possible. So I believe the council will want to do that, and obviously I can't speak for members here, but I think certainly officers are working hard on that.
What I would say as well, myself and my colleagues are working with our teams like Kelly, Celia and their management team below to ensure these forecasts are as robust and accurate as we possibly can get them. Yes, there are allowances built into these forecasts for placements and demand that we think is coming through. So I think certainly on the children's side, there's about £3 million worth of forecast for assumed placements to come through between at the time, I think was June, and to the end of December. So we are trying to build these as robustly as we possibly possibly can. In terms of that as well, we do have our panels that go in on the process that scrutinise and look at our placement forecasts. We try and link that into our One Medway Council Fit Plan. We're also coming up with business cases to try and review our expenditure. I think I met with Kelly and the services today, looking at more business cases. That, for example, we might bring in extra staff instead of sending work outside, because that makes a better saving for the local authority. So lots of work are going on behind the scenes.
Perhaps I'll come in on one last point of that, because we obviously mentioned EFS. The knock-on effect of EFS is the fact that we have to set aside an MRP, a minimum revenue provision, to repay that. But that's being built into all our interest and financing forecasts. So whatever we do, we are making sure everything is built in to give a most robust budget that we can for the future of Medway. So I think we are trying to take account of everything that is in there, but it is a challenging time, and I don't think anybody would say otherwise.
So I've got George and then Dan, but if we can take you both together and then officers can answer, because I'm really conscious of time. So
Who's Dan? Oh, you and I, Dan. Thank you, Chair. Is it comforting to know that the vast majority of the deficit, 10.5 million, is out with our immediate control because of the impact on adult health and social care and children's services?
Okay, so obviously the Children and Adults Directorate has the demand-led services, and we are seeing, as we've mentioned tonight, increased demand going through those. You know, if we have a child that comes through the door, we have to place that child. It's the same with an adult, and it's the same with the education healthcare plan. But we are trying to model that demand so we are as close to demand-led as possible.
Dan?
Mine was only a quick, George took about part of mine. Mine's a quick one, maybe not to the officers, they'd be glad to know, but even to Leanne or to heads of service or ADs. Is it fair to say, though, is that over the last 2 years, especially since we come in, following on from Councillor Galvin's comments, the budgets and overheads and your service managers, the robustness of the system, how everyone knows what the spend is and what they need to do is much more clearer. I know from the team it is very clear. There's none of this writing on a bit of a paper in a room and only one person knows. From what I understand and from other committees I sit on, the robustness is much better and everyone knows what their spend is and what it's not a miracle, you can't make it happen, but everyone knows what the pressures are and what they need to do. Is that fair to say?
I'll answer that, Councillor MacDonald. The short answer is yes. We are much more sophisticated in the way that we are modelling demand, and Mariah and Andy are very helpful in that. Still a long way to go. The risks have been spoken about this evening, but I do, sitting here, you know, a few years on, we're certainly in a better position, and even when we compare to some other local authorities in terms of the work we're doing around that modelling, it is more sophisticated at the moment. Thank you.
Eddie, if you're really quick.
I will be very quick. I'm just glad to hear your answer. Considering what we inherited, it's good that under this administration we are at least getting to grips, because obviously before you can fix anything, you've got to identify what you've got to fix. I'm glad to hear your response, so thank you.
I'll have to make the point again. The previous administration did not borrow to balance
I'm sorry,
the budget.
Adrian, did I say?
We have an extra 40 million.
I've turned his mic off. So I think if we move to the Vice Chair.
Thank you. I move that the committee notes the results of the first round of the revenue budget monitoring for 2005-26 and that the Cabinet instructed the corporate management team to implement urgent actions to bring expenditure back within budget.
And is that seconded and agreed? Oh, sorry, then that moves us on to the last item, which is the work programme.
I'll just take the report as read, but just to highlight that following last year when we took the Medway Safeguarding Children's Partnership report, it was agreed that we would have a session ahead of this year's report. So it has been arranged for the 17th of November at 5:30 on Teams, and I will be sending that out to everybody. And if everybody can please try to attend.
Cool. Then, Dan?
Mine was just, Steph, don't look so worried. Mine was just also reminded the action we did at the last one where CYP Chair and Vice Chair were coming to health, aren't they, this month as well?
It's on the 20th of August. I think we have representation. I think Councillor Joy, you will be attending, I believe.
I've sent apologies because
okay.
I'm on holiday that week, and I think my wife will kill me with straight past divorce if I didn't take that week off. Sorry.
It's fine, but I think everybody else will be attending. Mrs. Turpin will be attending, and so is Councillor Mandarakis and Howcroft Scott, and they'll be representing the committee.
Was there nobody else for this? In which case, Sharon?
I move that the committee notes the report and agree the works programme as set out in Appendix 1 to the report, subject to accepting the proposed changes outlined in italic text on Appendix 1. And Stephanie will be sending out as an invite and would like us all to attend.
Cool, seconded, agreed. Then that concludes this evening. Thank you all. Bye.